So, Custer's Last Stand by Worthington Games. Actually, two games in one, covers the Battle of the Rosebud as well, which was fought by General Crook earlier than the actual Battle of the Little Bighorn. Just to summarise, we've done the good and the bad. In a moment, we're going to get to the ugly. The good, cannot fault these production standards, qualities. The counters are fantastic. The map seems accurate enough and functional at least, and very nice looking. The rule books, we've got a playbook, two of those, two quick reference sheets. On the back of one is the forces available for the Custer's Last Stand, and on the other the forces for the Rosebud. The playbook has the actual setup as well as some historical commentary. Also gives victory conditions, points, etc. for both scenarios. And of course the rules. Focus. There we go. Problems. Commented on other videos that you'll find on YouTube. The rules do tend to repeat themselves. Nothing too major there, nothing that you can't work out. But they do tend to say the same thing over and over. The quick reference sheets, there is a problem with movement modifiers and also dismounting and mounting. The movement modifiers often incorrectly has missed that it's a plus, a value, plus something. So for example, crossing a river there it's just got written costs 2 movement points to cross a river. No, if you read the rule book, it's cost plus 2 movement points to cross a river. So moving from hex to hex costs 1 point. If you're crossing a river, it's an additional 2. So it actually costs 3 points to cross over a river. Okay, and just to prove that, down here it's got fords on a river cost 1 extra movement point to move across a ford hex line. So in other words, it costs 2 points to cross a river where a ford is. But if you take the quick reference sheet as written, it costs 2 movement points to cross a river, and then it says it costs 1 extra movement point to cross across a ford hex line, which is a total of 2 points. So if you take that as written, there's no difference between crossing at a river and crossing at a ford hex line. So yeah, there's a couple of spots here. If you go to the rules, they've missed these pluses. Now also down here, of course, the fact they've got it wrong up here means they've got it wrong down here in their example. For example, it says to move across a river hex side and enter a wood hex, their written would cost 4 movement points, bracket 2 movement points for the river and 2 movement points for the wood hex. Now, in fact, that should read 5 and 3. Nothing that you can't work out yourself by looking at the rule book and amending the quick reference sheet. The quick reference sheet, the other a glaring error I found. It says here, dismounting and mounting cost 2 movement points for each unit, and then it says may not be adjacent to an enemy unit when mounting or dismounting. Okay, I can run with that. That's not what the rule says. In the rule book, all right, focus, that paragraph there, mounting and dismounting. If you read down a bit, it says it normally costs 2 movement points to mount or dismount. It says it costs 3 movement points to mount or dismount if in an enemy zone of control. A direct contradiction of the quick reference sheet. What other problems are there? Mentioned about the turns or order of appearance. Custer there appears, as you can see there, appears on turn 1, Reno on turn 3, Benteen on turn 6+. Now there's also a problem with the orders of battle. They have the scouts with Custer. Now in fact, the scouts were down here with Reno. Reno should be moving first, then Custer, finally Benteen, and with Benteen, Company B was escorting the pack train along with others. It probably shouldn't come on until turn 8. I found a recommendation on the Board Game Geek that comes up with that exact suggestion. So, problem there. Moving on to the Indian villages. Now you can see there the 3 Hunkpapa villages, and here you've got your woods. Now, I think most people are aware that Reno attacked first. The scouts, they chuffed off over here somewhere. They were trying to get to the vast pony herd that was up here on this flat ridge. Along comes Reno. Now, in this game, you can stack 2 units in a hex, and you can have a leader as well. So you could have, the only time you can have more than 2 units as a hex is if you have the leader there as well. So you can have up to 3 if you've got a leader, but only 2 otherwise. The counters are quite good. That represents full strength. You can see there, that's Lieutenant McIntosh. He's got a combat value of 4, movement of 5. If for any reason that command suffers a loss, one of the first things you can do is flip it. So you can see there he's now gone to a combat value of 3. And then, of course, if he suffers another loss, he's removed from the game completely. But anyway, getting back to my point, given the scale of the game, what I understand, trying to relate this to history, is that Reno charged. Well, he was meant to charge. He got within several hundred yards of the Indian village, dismounted and started firing into the Indian village. Now, the Indians responded by swarming out, almost surrounding him. He retreated into these trees behind. Then his scout, Bloody Knife, had his brains blown out, mostly over poor old Reno. At that point, it would appear that Reno pretty much lost the plot. They came careering out of the woods. Now they've got a little hex here marked Reno Ford. My understanding is that It actually wasn't a ford. They just panicked and went across the river whenever they could. But for argument's sake, they went across here and up onto Reno Hill, which, as you can see, it's historically impossible to fit even Reno's actual command on Reno's Hill, let alone adding in Benteen and Co. when they show up. Now, the other problem is that the Hunkpapa village, when you put down the Hunkpapa warriors, and there's a total of 6 of them, they can be either on the Hunkpapa village or next to the Hunkpapa village. So there's nothing stopping the Hunkpapa. Well, for that matter, they don't even actually have to be on the village. They could be something like that. Now, as you can see, Reno comes along here. And remember, he didn't go into the woods historically first. He came along here. They attack. If he's forced to retreat, now a retreat would be either that way or that way. I can't see how you could logically argue that a retreat would be that way into the woods. So I think there's a problem with the initial setup. These should be, if you like, forced as far as possible to stay on top of their villages, or at the very least not allowed to extend beyond this area here. Now, it is a successful game system. It does work. It's a chit pull system. So in other words, depending on what turn it is, you can see here you've got chits for the various sub-tribes of the Sioux and the Cheyenne. We've also got chits here for the commanders. And depending on what turn it is, you pull out X number of chits, or the number of chits go into a bag and they're pulled out randomly for a turn. Now, the trouble I'm having with the game is that it's way too bloody. The games that I've played so far usually wind up with the metaphorical 2 old blokes with a stick poking at each other. And the reason is that, cat, get out of the way. The reason for that is this. Let's say you've got, let's say Benteen's come rushing up and he's supporting here. All right, this guy's out the front. And say the Hunkpapa draw their chit, so they get to move. Actually, let's put it, let's put it in there just to explain it a bit better. Okay. Now, what can happen is the Hunkpapa are quite at liberty to do this. Just ignore those chits there for the minute. Now, basically combat is you add up all the combat factors you have in an area. Sitting Bull's around here somewhere. Where are we? Yeah, get in there. You add up all the combat factors of the attacking units, and this works the other way for the cavalry too. You add up all the attacking combat factors and they can attack a single hex. So in other words, you don't have to, this group of units here doesn't have to take into account these cavalry here, and this group of units here doesn't have to take into account these cavalry. So they can mass onto this one hex regardless. These give no defensive support, nothing. These guys aren't forced to fight them. These guys aren't forced to fight them. So what happens is each time you pull a chit, movement tends to degenerate into massing that particular chit's forces around a single hex to get the ultimate odds of +10. What you do is you compare the combat factors. So just for example here, we've got 4 horns, rain in the face, that's 8, plus another 7, what's that, 15, plus another 4, what did I say, 15, so 19 is it? That'll do for our purposes. So it's 19 to 9. So you get this mystical, magical +10. So what does that mean? It means when you roll the dice, the Indians in this example is going to get +10. So 14 to 3, you can see it's quite, once you get up to these heady amounts of, +7, 8, 9, 10, you're pretty much looking at a result of +7. Now, what you do is you compare the die rolls after modification. Now, in this case, it was 11, so +7. So the attacker is +7, defender 2 losses and retreat. So in this case, fortunately, the cavalry could do this. They flip, and then they run away. Now, as you can imagine, as the game wears on and more chits are activated, losses become staggering because of this business of each time you activate a chit, you just hunt round for someone you can outnumber, 7, 8, 9, preferably 10 or more, before you've even rolled dice. Now, some people might argue, well, they're not actually, say in the Indians' case, they're not actually dead or injured. It's just they've been gradually reduced to impotency and they've run away. Yeah. What do you say about the cavalry? The cavalry don't run away in any sort of sense. They're either dead or they succeed. So that's, for me, is the ugly bit, the failing of the game, the real failing of the game. Most other things you can work out. And please, I'm not saying it's not a good game. My son and I have played it. We have enjoyed it. But from a historical perspective, for me, it's lacking. So I'm going to have to fiddle with the combat system. And of course, the minute you start fiddling with something, then you've got to start looking at the victory conditions, the rule of unintended consequences, etc., etc., etc. Am I saying the game's no good? No. But if you are a historical grognard, I would suggest that perhaps you might like to look elsewhere. I originally bought the game hoping to be able to modify it, if you like, use it as some sort of, not a campaign map, but perhaps be able to replace these sorts of counters with actual little stands of figures. Replace these small mapboard hexes with great big 10 centimetre or more hexagon scenery, so as to in effect recreate the game in miniature. But until I can fix this combat system, I don't think I'm going to be going down that path. Okay, I'll leave it there for the minute. I'm going to play it a few times with my amended orders of battle, my amended entrance turn, with Reno coming in first, Custer second, and then Benteen third, and then the pack train even after that. As far as the combat is concerned, I might try some sort of rule that you can't gang up unless that particular hex that you're trying to gang up on is isolated. If there are other units in the battle, then you must try and attack all units possible. Or some such variation of that. I guess it's a case of suck it and see. Okay, look, we'll leave it there. I apologise. I have done absolutely no painting for about the last 4 weeks. I have absolutely nothing to show you. I have been buying board games and playing and learning such. After this, Battle of Britain is next in my target. And wow, do I have some problems with that. Again, great game, but Messerschmitt 109s and Stukas appearing over Newcastle and Manchester? I don't think so, buddy. Okay. All right, we'll leave it for there. Hope everyone's well. Catch you all soon. Bye for now.